Hi everyone, Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes here. Today we will be working on this portrait and I'm going to show you that editing portraits in Capture One doesn't have to be complex and it doesn't have to be time consuming. So we will take this starting raw file and we will be working towards this result. Let's begin. Okay, so let's begin with our edit. So let's firstly very quickly analyze the image. So this is our original starting raw file. As you can see, the portrait is backlit. I have natural light coming from behind and a bit from the left-hand side of the model. Probably, I don't remember at this point, I might have a reflector just positioned here to bounce a little bit of light to provide some light to lit his face on the right-hand side, but nothing really elaborate, nothing complicated. So I'm going to keep edit very simple as well. So the main emphasis I'm going to put on luminosity adjustments, and I will add a little bit of color grading, but something really simple that you can replicate in your workflow. So let's get started. I'm going to create a new variant of this image and we will start from there. Let's just switch off my before and after so I have hit Y key on my keyboard. So first of all, let's take a look at our base characteristics setting. So in our exposure tab, I'm just going to simply scroll here and take a look at base characteristics. So you can see that Capture One automatically discovered the camera. So I have taken the portrait with Nikon D700 and it applied the auto curve. When I edit portraits, I always check if the image will look better with linear response or portrait, specifically with linear response, because if we zoom in, let's maybe zoom in a little bit and maybe let's at first apply the auto level. So this will be our starting point for luminosity adjustments, and if we take a look at the histogram, I can see that I'm clipping a bit of highlights, but I don't have shadows. I can make the image a little bit darker to extend the histogram, and in fact if I check exposure warning, this red overlay indicates those clipped highlights that are visible here in my histogram. So let's switch off exposure warning and very quickly as the very first step I'm going to apply auto adjustments on levels. So let's just go to our levels and let's hit on the second icon. So you can see automatically how the histogram has shifted, how it has changed. So I can't make it bigger, but let's just reset the adjustment and let's apply again. So this is before. If you take a look at the histogram, you can see the gap here. If I apply auto adjustments on levels, the data is stretched evenly from the left hand side to the right. So now we can work much more effectively with curves. Okay, let's get back to our background layer and to our base characteristics. So right now the base characteristics, the curve is set to auto, and let's experiment how it will affect the image if I go for portrait. So this gives me a little bit softer result comparing to auto. So let's check how changing the curve to linear response will affect the image. So if I go for this one, if I zoom in, you can see that I have way more texture visible here on the face. So when I'm working on portraits, I really like all the subtle tones that I have now available when I went for linear response. Okay, so at this point we have adjusted automatically levels, we have applied auto levels to our image, and we have changed curve in base characteristics to linear response. So you will see when we will be editing the skin that it makes sense. You can see already that we have way more detail, way more subtle tones available now in comparison with this way flatter image before changing the base characteristics. Okay, let's switch off before and after. Let's zoom out. Okay, so as a next step, I'm going to be working with the Hdr tool and I'm going to open a little bit of the shadows. So let's simply create new filled layer, so that way I will be working in a tidy and organized way, and you will be able to see the layers stack and gradually will build up towards the final result. It will be easy to see what we have actually applied to the edit. So we are on our Hdr layer, and let's just scroll down to the high dynamic range tool. Here I'm just going to open up shadows. So by pushing this slider to the right, I'm opening the shadows, I'm adding detail to the shadows. Be careful though, you don't want to make the image look flat and fake. So let's click on the shadow word, so that way I can see the before and after. So I'm going to leave it at about 20. We can always get back to this layer and readjust it if there will be such a need. So as a next step, I will be working with curves. So this will be our luminosity adjustments for this image. So let's create another adjustment layer, new field adjustment layer, and let's super quickly rename it to luminosity. Okay, so on the luminosity layer, we will be working with curves. So let's just pick the tool and let's pull it out, so that way we can make it bigger. This will allow us to work with bigger precision. I can switch off the browser. We don't need it. So on the curves layer, I'm going to be working with both curves, RGB and Luma. Remember that RGB will affect colors in the image and Luma will only affect luminosity. But I don't mind at this point affect a little bit of colors. This will make colors more saturated. I'm going to take care of colors at the very last step of the edit. So I'm going to create a very classic S-shaped curve here to add a little bit more contrast, to push the highlights into the brighter side. I want to create nice contrast between his left hand side of the face, his left cheek, and the right hand side. So let's see if we can use any of the ready presets for the curve that are available here. So I can go for contrast RGB, I can go for contrast Luma. So actually contrast Luma looks nicer. Let's see, I think I will combine both. So let's go for contrast Luma. So by applying this preset, Capture One automatically created S-shaped curve on my Luma curve. This is super handy, super helpful, and now we can manually readjust those points if we want. So first of all, I would like to maybe make these highlights still a little bit brighter. So since we have changed the curve in base characteristics to linear response, we have now a little bit more flexibility when working here on all those details. So I'm going to push this point still a little bit further up, and I will maybe open up shadows a little bit. I would like to go for a little bit more matte effect. So this I will do on Rgb Curve. I want to just balance out the image more. Let's just push the curve back. So if we take a quick glance, we can see that the right-hand side of the image is very bright, we have plenty of light, we have plenty of space, but the left-hand side is sort of heavy. So I don't want to manipulate with the HDR adjustments further, I just want to check if creating the matte effect will help in this case. So I'm going to go back to the RGB curve. We are on the luminosity layer. We are working on luminosity in our image. So I'm going to first create one point somewhere. Let's maybe pull it out here. Somewhere around this place. So this is in the darker tones, and this will anchor basically the curve. So I don't want this to be affecting the highlights. Let's create another one here, and I'm going to lift the black point. So by lifting the black point, you can see that I'm introducing more of the matte effect into the image. This has in fact darkened my bright midtones in the image, so I'm going to just manually readjust them. If you want to be super precise, you can work on arrows on your keyboard. So by lifting the black point, you can see that I was able to create this very airy sort of silverish effect to the image. Let's get back with our curves. So if we switch the luminosity layer off, this is the image before, this is the image after. Just by working with curves, we've already created this silverish effect, which I really like. I'm very happy with the way, with the direction the edit is going. So again, before and after. I feel though that the image is a little bit too dark, so let's revisit our curves and let's maybe on the Luma curve apply adjustments. To this point, if you want to be precise, we can use the picker, and if I will be hovering over the image, you can see this vertical orange line that is moving across the graph. So going all the way from the highlights, then my bright midtones and going towards the darker midtones. This can help you applying super precisely points on your curve if you want to be that precise. So I have applied my auto curve and I'm quite happy with the results. So I'm not going to be adding any additional control points. I just want to see more or less that I would like to lift this part of the curve. So I'm going to get back here. Let's just deselect the cursor. And with this one, I'm just going to very, very softly push this one up and introduce a little bit more light into the image without making it flat. So this point is making dark midtones a little bit darker, and that way we have introduced a little bit of contrast. Okay, so right now I'm happy with the luminosity adjustments. I'm going to spend few seconds working on the eyes. So let's just zoom in to the eyes and let's add new adjustment layer. This time I'm going to add empty adjustment layer and let's rename it to eyes. So right now we will be painting in mask with the brush. So let's just hit M and that way the mask will be visible. Then we have to select brush. So I'm hitting B on the keyboard. With my left square bracket, actually it doesn't work. So let's right click on the image and I'm going to decrease size. And when it comes to hardness, 0, opacity 100 and flow, let's go for a little bit higher flow because I'm sure that I just want to cover certain areas in the image. So let's go and paint our mask over this part of the eye. I don't want to make the whites brighter. I want to maintain the natural look as natural and as simple as possible. So that way we will be working in a harmonious way without introducing any strong light in certain areas in the image that are not needed. So let's just switch off the mask. Let's switch off the preview. I'm hitting M on the keyboard. So all I want to do here is just to push shadow slider towards the right to open up shadows, and then I will go for clarity and I will go for punch method. So this will affect color, but I don't mind. This will make the eyes darker as well. So I need to find a nice balance. So with quite a strong value, you can see that we are adding contrast to the midtones. So especially the eye to the left, his right eye is getting much stronger definition. And let's just get back to our Hdr tool and let's see. So this is before, this is the after. I think it's okay, it's not too much. Let's just zoom out and we can still fine-tune it on the layers level. So we have our layer for the eyes, so we can switch it off and on, and if we feel that this is too much, we can maybe decrease opacity of the layer, but I feel that it's fine. Okay, as a next step, I will add a little bit of dodging and burning, but don't worry, we are going to keep everything simple. We will not be manually painting in the mask. We are going to use the super clever tool that Capture One offers, and we will be working with Luma range masks. So what is the result that I want to achieve? I have applied my luminosity adjustments. I have introduced the three-dimensionality to the image. So now I have increased contrast in the face, but I would like to still introduce a little bit more of light in a very controlled and subtle way. And I might want to deepen a little bit of the dark elements, especially on the left-hand side of the face and maybe here within the hands, just to add depth to the image. So let's super quickly create two new adjustment layers. The first one we are going to rename to Dodge, and the second one we are going to rename, and this is going to be called Burn. Okay, so on the very first layer we will go for Luma range mask, and this time we want to create a mask that will cover brighter areas in the image. So first of all, hit this little button, display mask. This is way too much. Everything that is covered with the red overlay is going to be affected with our adjustment. So at this point we are creating a mask. We can refine the mask further if the mask that is created here is not sufficient. So I'm going to zoom in. Okay, I can't zoom in when I have already started working with this tool, but I just see that the mask looks quite good. However, those transitions here are a little bit too harsh. So I think I will refine it a little bit later in the next step. So let's go for something like this. So I'm going to hit apply, and now I will be working maybe with curves just to introduce a little bit more light. So I'm going to go for, let's try Rgb Curve, just to create a control point in the middle and push it upwards. So this will brighten the image in a very subtle way. So let's maybe stop here and let's see before and after. Okay, I think it works quite well. Let's just check our exposure warning. So I'm blowing out my highlights here in the background, but it doesn't bother me, it's okay. Let's just push it a little bit further upwards to introduce more light to the face. Okay, so let's switch off the exposure warning and let's again check. So this is before and this is the after. So you can see that in a very subtle way we have introduced still a little bit more of light to the eye of the model, and the light that is touching his face on the right hand side looking from my side got strengthened, and it looks very, very beautiful. So again, before and after. So as I've mentioned before, the mask here on the left cheek is quite harsh, so I'm not happy with the texture visible here. So this is creating this sort of texture that increases the visibility of pores, and I don't want this to happen. So I'm going to just refine mask. So right now we are still in the Luma mask. You can see this little sun icon here, and that means that we can refine mask if we want to. So if I again click on Luma range, you are back to the tool and you can still refine the mask here. But we are not going to do this. We are going to rasterize mask. So right click on the layer and let's select from here Rasterize Mask. So once we've done this, we can't edit the mask. Remember though that this gives you the possibility to refine the mask, but you can't go back, and the editing of Luma range mask is now closed. You can't do this anymore. So just to bear this in mind. So having the mask rasterized, we can now right click again and go for a refine mask. This is super cool tool, super precise, and you can see how it affects the mask. So this is before. You can see those quite harsh transitions here. I'm going to actually zoom in So we'll see what I'm doing. I'm just talking about softening this part here because I really like the light that was introduced, but I don't like these sort of textures that appeared here. They were not visible before applying the dodge layer. So again, let's right click on the layer and select Refine Mask. So we are going to reset Display Mask. So this is our original mask, and by pushing this slider towards the right, you can see how we are softening the mask. Remember though that you are softening the whole mask, so you will be softening the transition all over the image. And let's just see. So going for something like this, I think this will be a good compromise. Actually, I'm going to zoom out because now we are focusing too much on this little area of the face, and I want to see how this is affecting the rest of the face of the subject. So again, right click and Refine Mask. Let's just zero out Display Mask, and now if I will be pushing towards the right, I'm making that transition here softer, but everything here on the right hand side gets softer as well. So now I have the possibility of seeing directly how this tool is affecting the light that I have added to the image. So if I switch this off, the overlay of the mask is not visible anymore, but I can dynamically see how manipulating with the Refine Mask tool is affecting the image. So we had something like this at the very beginning. The light was stronger, but if we go towards the right hand side, the light gets softer, and we were able to get rid of that quite harsh texture here, and we are still maintaining the beautiful light that we introduced to the right hand side of the image and to the eye. So let's apply, and let's now take a preview of the mask, so it got a little bit softer. If you wanted, you could manipulate with the mask further manually with the brush, but I'm happy with the result. This is male portrait, so I don't need to worry about the skin too much. So again, this is before, this is the after. Now, very quickly, we are going to repeat this operation, but we are going to add a little bit more of shadow. We are going to deepen shadows a little bit, especially around the eye. So I want to add a little bit more definition. So let's just hit Luma range, and here we want to create a mask that will cover shadows. So let's maybe position the window here so it's out of our way. So let's hit first Display Mask, and let's go from very dark shadows. So for me, important part is to introduce shadows in the eyes. I want to strengthen them, so let's go maybe for something like this. Let's hit Apply, and let's now jump to our curves. So we are on the burn layer, and let's again, here we were working with RGB, so on burn we will go for RGB as well, and I'm just going to darken the shadows a little bit, so you can see how we were able to work on specifically chosen parts in the image. So I went for the selected luminosity range for the shadows, and that way, by creating our Luma mask, we are targeting only shadows, and then when we applied curve, we were able to make those shadows darker in a super precise way. So as you noticed, we were able to create this pixel perfect mask in a few seconds. So let's just zoom in and let's again see before and after. So I'm happy with the light over the eye, but I feel that it's a little bit too strong here in this part. It's making that part of the hair a little bit too heavy. So I'm going to rasterize the Luma mask. So right now we have this little sun visible. It means that the Luma mask is editable. I'm going to rasterize it, and I'm going to fine-tune it with a brush. So if I hit M, this is my mask. I'm going to go for brush, and actually I'm going to go for eraser. So let's just increase size of the brush, and Let's go for quite a low flow and let's hit E. My brushes are linked. So I have the last option ticked. This is switched on, link all brushes, and this means that whatever I set for the brush will be applied for the eraser. So I'm just going to very softly paint over this part of the image that I feel that got a little bit too heavy, a little bit too dark. So again, before and after. So that way I'm introducing darkness, I'm darkening the shadows in the face area over the eye, but I'm not making the left-hand side of the image heavier anymore. So let's just see the mask and we can maybe remove it from here as well. Okay, let's switch off the overlay. Okay, so at this point we can add a little bit of clarity. We will be going towards the color grading. So if we hit Y, this is before on the left hand side. This is the image we have started with, and this is the after. So let's now add a tiny bit of clarity. This will add contrast into the midtones in the image, and then we will jump over into color balance tool. So we can actually add clarity on the HDR layer. So we'll keep our layer stack a little bit more simple. So on the HDR layer, let's find our clarity. And here I'm going to use either natural or classic method. So let's go with classic. Let's just push the slider slightly towards the right so you can see that we are adding definition in the midtones, but I don't want to over sharpen the image. I like this dreamy soft light and this very subtle atmosphere energy around the portrait. So let's just see what we have done before and after. So actually I feel that I will apply clarity only over the eyes. Maybe let's check with natural. So it's calculating. Let's see before and after. Actually, it looks fine. I think I will just remove it from the cheek. So if I hit M now, this is the mask that is covering the whole image evenly. So I'm going to go for eraser, slightly decrease size of the brush. Okay, but as you can see, this doesn't work because on this very layer we have both HDR adjustment and clarity applied. So when I'm removing the mask, I'm removing the HDR adjustment as well. So I have to apply my clarity adjustment on a separate level. I have removed what I have erased. And this is a very good example of showing you how keeping the layers separate for every particular adjustments, how this can make your workflow more effective and simple. So here I'm going to add clarity. Okay, and I will go for the value that I have applied before, around 17. And now if I work with the eraser, this is only removing clarity from this part of the image. So this is the mask and this is before and after. So that way you can be super precise, and sometimes it looks sort of time consuming to create new layer for every adjustment, but this is a habit that I have created for myself, and when I have everything on one layer I don't feel comfortable because I don't like going into these panels and searching for particular adjustment that I want to apply and just not seeing clearly what was done in the image. If I'm working that way, I can just switch off all those layers and I can see exactly what every layer is doing, how every adjustment is affecting my image. This is helpful as well if I create new variant for this image and if I want to maybe, for example, keep everything except from luminosity. If I would like to go for different sort of adjustments, I can create new variant. I can just switch off these layers or remove them and go for darker edit. So working with the layers tool, taking advantage of layers can be super powerful and helpful. Okay, so we have applied a little bit of clarity and now I'm going to go for very last adjustments when it comes to luminosity. I'm going to close the image a little bit with a vignette. I won't go for the classic vignette because this will apply just a sort of ellipse, and the center of the image will be here around his lips, between the lips and his fingers. What I want to keep the emphasis on is his eyes. And this part is positioned more towards the top edge of the image. So to create a custom vignette, I have to use the Radial gradient tool. So all I need to do is to just pick the tool and create my shape. So something like this, but actually, no, I want to first create new field adjustment layer, and I will rename it to vignette, because I have created my gradient on clarity layer, and again I would be affecting clarity, so this will be applying just clarity in the middle. So if I hit M, you can see how this would affect the image. Maybe it's not a bad idea to have clarity just in the center, but let's stick to the original plan. So I'm going to hit Command Z to get rid of this, and I'm going to apply vignette on the separate layer that I have created. So let's hit M to get rid of the overlay of the mask, and let's apply our vignette here. So I want to have the eyes in the center, but I want this to be quite large so it won't apply any shadow in the darker part of the image. I want this vignette to be super subtle. So let's hit M. This is the preview of our mask, and I'm just going to go for negative value on exposure. So we are in the exposure tab, and this will be here. So exposure, and let's very, very gently push this slider towards the left. So now we are on negative 0.2. So before and after. Let's just replace it. Position sort of that it will be darkening the bottom part of the image. I don't want to introduce any darkness here to the left because it will get too heavy. So again, before and after. Let's maybe make it a little bit smaller. Okay. So again, before and after. We can go maybe for a little bit stronger vignette. So you can adjust this to your liking, and remember always you can either change the value here in the exposure, or you can do this directly here on the vignette layer. You can apply different value for opacity. So if you feel that the vignette is too heavy, you can go towards the left, and that way you will make it more subtle, you will make it less visible. So before and after. Okay, let's now jump over to the last step of this edit, and let's apply a touch of color grading to the image. I must admit that I'm very happy with the way the image has changed just after applying luminosity adjustments. So this already affected the color, but we are going to add this very last touch. So let's zoom into the image and let's add new adjustment layer, fill layer, and let's rename it to color. So here we will be working with color balance tool, super flexible, super powerful, and super fast tool. So I'm going to go for the classic color grading combination. I will add a hint of blue into the shadows in the image, and I will add a little bit of warmer tones into the midtones. So let's just jump over to the shadow, and here let's push this little circle towards the blue. So you can see that already with this super simple move we were able to create a little bit more impact. So this is before, this is the after. By making the background cooler, by injecting the blue, by making the color deeper, we've been able to create distinction between the subject and the background. So let's now quickly jump over to midtones, and here I'm going to go for warmer colors. So let's go for some nice warm orangey tones that will affect mostly skin tones. So something like this. Let's see the before and after. And don't forget that with these sliders positioned to the right, you can still further adjust luminosity level. So we are now inside the mid-tone range, and if I push this slider upwards, I will be making my mid-tones brighter. If I push the slider downwards, I will make my mid-tones darker. So in case of this portrait, I don't feel any need to touch it. If I go for shadows, maybe we can darken a little bit the shadows and add a little bit more of the blue. So we can be precise with manipulating directly with the slider here. I don't want to make the image too cool though, so let's just see the before and after. This is before and this is the after. If you would like to go for stronger effect and add a color cast effect, you can go for master channel, and here if you go for warm tone, this will warm up your image entirely and you can cool it down whatever you like. So depending on your creative idea. I just wanted to create a super simple color grading as I have promised you at the beginning of this edit. So again, this is before and this is the after. So if I now jump to my eyes layer, I feel that I might make them still a little bit brighter. So I will go for my Hdr tool and open up those shadows still a little bit more. Okay, this is way too much. Something like this, before and after. Let's go maybe for stronger clarity. So this will darken the eyes. Okay, I think this is too much. So I'm selecting the value and working with arrows on my keyboard. Okay, I'm happy with something like this. So now, very last touch, let's just add a little bit more sharpening to the image. I'm going to do this on a separate layer. On the background layer, if you go to the detail tab, you will have the default sharpening that was applied by Capture One. This is 180. And we can maybe, we can readjust it here. So if I go for a little bit more, I'm going to keep it nice and soft, so I'm not going to push it further. Something like this is sufficient. And let's add a tiny bit of film grain. So my favorite is silver or tabular. You can experiment. I think I will go for silver rich and go for quite a subtle film grain, so this is not overtaking the image. I'm not creating anything strong, just to add this very subtle touch and make this image look a little bit less digital. Okay, so this is before and this is the after. So our edit is ready. I have finished working on the image. Okay, so let's take a quick preview. This is our before and after. The image to the left is our starting point. As you can see, with a few simple steps, without anything complex, without any manual painting, we've been able to go from here to here. So the color grading was super simple. I have limited it just to the color balance tool, but I think it gave us this little final nice polishing touch. The most important part of the edit was getting the luminosity right. Once this was in place, it was quite simple, and we've been adding just very few adjustments, such as clarity. We've been introducing more contrast in the midtones. So I took my time because I was explaining every single step of the edit in a very detailed way. However, believe me, if I was working on this image for myself without thinking about all these adjustments, I would be able to finish this edit maybe in a maximum 10-15 minutes. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should be working automatically. I'm just saying that with a bit of experience, you can apply all these steps very fast and you can be still thoughtful. Especially when you are working on luminosity adjustments, you have to be really precise and careful so you can enjoy your final results. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this sort of tutorials, if you want to learn more about Capture One, I will really appreciate if you leave a comment. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask under this video. And if you like this sort of tutorials, please leave me a like on this video and subscribe to this channel. If you would like to learn more in depth about Capture One, you can check link in the description to this video. I have a comprehensive course on Capture One. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes.